Greetings, Sentinels. This is Universe Unique, and today, the truth comes to light. This is not just another episode of Peacemaker. What we saw in episode 2x03 was a quiet but surgical move by James Gunn to rewrite the future of the DCU, without most people noticing. Because while you were laughing at the jokes, a new Earth was being shaped. And within it, maybe, lies the Superman who will lead the complete reboot of the universe. Yes, you heard that right. But there's one specific scene that changes everything, and no one is talking about it. I'll get back to that in a moment. Before we dive in, if you enjoy this kind of deep analysis, packed with hidden connections, canonical clues, and theories grounded in real evidence, consider subscribing to the channel. We're about to hit a major milestone here, and your support today could be the push that gets us there. And one more thing, tell me in the comments, from what city and country are you watching this video? I read every response, and I love seeing just how far these theories are reaching. If this content is connecting you with the hottest news and theories in the nerd universe, hit the triple kill right now. Like, comment, and share. Let's get into it. The episode is called Another Rick Up My Sleeve. At first glance, the title looks like just another wordplay trick. But it's more than that. Because behind the reference to Rick Flag's return lies a complete framework for a narrative reboot. Why? Because for the first time in the series, James Gunn directly ties Peacemaker to the future of Superman. Man of Tomorrow, confirming that this show is not just a side story. It is the emotional, symbolic, and canonical prologue to the new DCU. And this isn't speculation. Gunn himself said it. This season serves as a spiritual prequel to his Superman film. But that raises an unsettling question. If this is a prelude, where is Superman right now? Is he watching? Has he already intervened without us realizing it? Or has he already appeared and we simply didn't recognize him? Because there's a clue buried in a secondary line of dialogue that suggests the crossing of dimensions is not just a dramatic device. It is the mechanism by which the rules of canon are going to be rewritten. And that clue shows up exactly when you least expect it. I'll come back to that in a moment. But first, you need to see why Rick Flag's return is the true trigger for this new phase. Because the way he appears, and where he appears, shifts the emotional weight of the entire series so far. And that, of course, ties directly to what Gunn is planning for the final episodes. Because yes, there is a very anticipated name that could show up. And no, I'm not only talking about Lex Luthor. This is not just a nostalgic comeback. It's a direct disruption of the series' moral axis. Rick Flag Jr. appears again, yes, but this time from an alternate dimension where Peacemaker never killed him. And that changes everything. Because if that killing was the breaking point for Christopher Smith's redemption arc, what we have now is a distorted mirror. A version of reality where that trauma never happened, and where Flag is still alive. But he's not exactly the same Flag. In this other Earth, Rick Flag is not the tragic hero we remember. There's something about his attitude, the way he speaks, that makes him seem more insecure, even a little possessive. And that's not an accident. James Gunn builds this version to contrast with the integrity of the Flag in the original DCU. And in doing so, he also rewrites how Peacemaker perceives himself. Because, for the first time, Christopher is confronted with a past that could have been, and that reopens a wound that never fully healed. But here's the most tense part. Flag isn't just alive. He's emotionally tied to Harcourt. And that exposes a hidden triangle we had only guessed at before. In the episode's flashbacks, we see that Harcourt and Rick had a secret relationship just before the mission in the Suicide Squad. A relationship that was never made public. And now, in retrospect, it explains why Harcourt keeps her distance from Peacemaker. He killed the man she loved. Nobody says it outright, but that's the fracture splitting the team. The moment Peacemaker sees Flag again, in this new dimension, isn't edited as a surprise twist. It's cut like a trauma flashback, a reminder of everything Christopher has carried since that gunshot. That's why, even if this Rick isn't the real one, the emotional impact is identical. It's as if his guilt has crossed dimensions with him. And there's a detail in that scene that could easily go unnoticed, but is crucial. Rick Flag is wearing a yellow shirt. The same color scheme he wore in the Suicide Squad. A symbol of his integrity and leadership. But here, that same color feels forced, uncomfortable. As if Gunn is telling us that even when appearances repeat, the meaning has changed. And that has very clear implications for the rest of the season, which we'll get to soon. Because there's another revelation looming. And it's not just about Rick. It's about the kind of universe we're exploring. A universe where everything seems to fit, until you notice who's missing. This is where things start to take on a more complex tone, because James Gunn isn't just presenting an alternate dimension for parallel plots. He is officially establishing, by name and structure, the existence of an Earth 2 within the new DCU. And this isn't a semantic coincidence. It's not a simple nod to The Flash. It's a deliberate move to lay the foundation for a multiverse that's cohesive, functional, and entirely separate from the Arrowverse's legacy. Gunn was very clear about naming this other reality Earth 2, but without canonizing events from the Flash series or the old DCEU. This means we're looking at a brand new incarnation of the DC multiverse, one where the rules are not inherited but redefined, and that changes everything. Because in this new framework, each universe has the potential to reshape canon whenever the script demands it. It's essentially a permanent soft reboot, where continuity can adapt to narrative needs without constant justifications through time travel or cosmic crises. Visually, there are also clear signals of this separation. The production design of Earth 2 deliberately avoids references that would remind viewers of the Arrowverse. No Star Labs, no Central City, no nods to earlier versions of classic heroes. Instead, it presents a cleaner, more neutral aesthetic. Almost like a blank slate. And that's essential. Gunn needs this Earth to feel different, even if familiar concepts or names are recycled. Because what's at stake here is not just the identity of the characters, but the identity of the universe itself. But there's a name hanging in the air, one that hasn't been spoken, but whose absence is heavy: Barry Allen. And this is where narrative tension rises. Because everything about this structure echoes The Flash Season 2, when Zoom opens portals to Earth 2, and alternate versions start crossing over. But here, there are no speedsters, no scientific explanation, just a door, literally, connecting two realities. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Why is Gunn using multiverse language while deliberately avoiding the characters who defined it for over a decade? That omission is not accidental. It's strategic. By holding back on Flash, Gunn reserves dimensional collapse as a future resource for something bigger, which suggests this Earth 2 might not be just another alternate reality, but the foundation for the new DCU. A platform to rewrite canon, not through crisis, but through a quiet migration of characters, ideas, and new symbols. But that only works if a key figure is already there. And in this episode, there are multiple subtle hints pointing to such a presence. We haven't seen him yet, but his shadow is already cast over this new Earth. And no, we're not just talking about Flag. There's another figure watching from the sidelines, and all signs point to him wearing a red cape. What James Gunn is doing with Peacemaker isn't just building a spin-off. He's surgically inserting the first signals of the new Superman, without showing him yet. And this episode is filled with those signals. The most direct one, Gunn himself confirmed the show acts as a spiritual prequel to Superman, Man of Tomorrow. But that statement takes on a new weight once you look at the dates, the dialogue, and the objects on screen. In the flashback with Harcourt and Rick Flag in the main universe, it's said that the events happened just before the mission in Corto Maltese, meaning right before Peacemaker killed him. But it's also noted that this was 3 years ago. And what happened 3 years ago in the new DCU? Exactly. It was the moment Superman first revealed himself to the world. That's not coincidence. That's synchronized chronology. Gunn is saying, while Harcourt was suffering in silence and Peacemaker was preparing for betrayal, Superman was already out there, saving lives in the background. We just didn't know it yet. And that's not all. Superman's favorite band, the Mighty Crowdjoys, is mentioned on a poster inside the alternate universe, with a presence too prominent to be accidental. This fictional group, created by Gunn for the DCU, appears in Creature Commandos and will actively connect to David Corenswet's Superman. It's a nod, yes, but also a marker of presence. They're there because he is there. Then comes the most unsettling detail: indirect references to Lex Luthor. Because if this series is laying the groundwork for Man of Tomorrow, it can't just be about Superman. There has to be the inevitable duality. Gunn has already hinted that in the film, the title Man of Tomorrow refers not only to Kal-El, but also to Luthor. And in this episode, the new antagonist figure, Red Saint Wild, serves as a chilling allegory. A hunter obsessed with killing eagles. Eagly symbol, but also a clear metaphor for the American ideal embodied by Superman. This character isn't Luthor, but he behaves like Luthor. He thinks like Luthor. And that's the point. Gunn is planting the idea of an ideological antagonist, not just a physical one. A man who hates what the symbol represents. That's Luthor at his core. And one last scene stands out. At the end of the episode, Peacemaker whispers to the alternate Harcourt, "Best dimension ever." A phrase he had said before. But this time, he says it while her back is turned. Did she hear it? Did she notice the tone? Did it sound strange to her? Because if so, then someone else may already be suspecting that Christopher Smith doesn't belong in that world. And if someone is watching those anomalies from above, it's probably someone with a red cape. Or a pair of reporter's glasses. Maybe both. The most disturbing part of this season isn't the multiverse, it's the mirror. Because this new version of reality doesn't just give Peacemaker an escape, it gives him everything he ever wanted. Acceptance, fame, respect, and above all, love. But it all comes at a price. Because the deeper Christopher Smith sinks into this alternate Earth, the more he erases the traces of who he was. And that silent, gradual loss of identity is what's truly at stake. From the moment he crosses the portal, Earth 1's Peacemaker acts as if he's found his personal paradise. Everyone loves him, his brother is alive, he rides a custom motorcycle, the Peace Cycle, and he even seems to have a second chance with that world's Harcourt. But what begins as emotional relief quickly turns into an emotional trap. This Earth isn't perfect, it's an illusion, and the cracks show the longer he stays. The signs are subtle but troubling. The original Peacemaker of this dimension was addicted to pills, trapped in a toxic relationship with Harcourt, and burdened by a past filled with questionable decisions. He wasn't a hero. He was a broken facade. And now, Christopher has unknowingly inherited that legacy. The posters, the altered songs, the tiny shifts in pop culture, like the absence of the Kardashians or slightly distorted brand names, work as quiet alarms that something isn't right. And yet, he wants to stay. He says it outright. He's willing to take the other Peacemaker's place, maintain the lie, and abandon the original DCU. Why? Because for the first time, he feels like he's not a joke. But that's exactly the danger. Because the more he fits into this borrowed life, the more damage he causes. And not just to himself. This dimension's version of his brother, Keith, now known as Captain Triumph, has already started to suspect. The glances, the silences, the moments where it looks like he knows something doesn't add up. And when he finds out the truth, when he realizes his real brother was killed and replaced by an alternate version, the emotional fallout will be explosive. Not only because of the betrayal, but because this Keith has powers. And we already saw them in action during the Sons of Liberty attack. The phrase, "best dimension ever," that Christopher repeats twice in the episode may sound like a celebration, but it's a premonition. Because if this dimension is so perfect, why does he need to repeat it like a mantra? Who is he really trying to convince? Everyone else or himself? What James Gunn is building here isn't just another multiverse story. It's a study in self-deception. Of how even an anti-hero can be seduced by a sugar-coated version of reality, to the point of betraying his own redemption arc. But there's still one more piece of the puzzle to fall into place. A clue that will reveal whether this Earth is just a detour or the new launchpad for the DC Universe. Up to this point, everything we've seen in Earth 2 fits the framework of a functional parallel world. But there's a more unsettling possibility. This reality may not just be an alternate universe, it may actually be the core of the new DCU. If that's the case, then what we're witnessing is something much deeper than a science fiction storyline. We're watching, in real time, the birth of a new continuity, and the silent death of the old one. James Gunn has said it more than once. What happens in Peacemaker is canon. That means every element of this season, from the portals to the duplicate characters, could have real consequences for the future of the films. But there's one detail that strongly confirms this suspicion. Argus has detected 99 active dimensional doors. 99. And they're trying to shut them down. Not for safety, but for control. If Argus manages to close those gateways, Peacemaker will be trapped in one of the two Earths permanently. And that decision, that forced confinement, could be the perfect narrative device to justify a soft reboot. Sealing access to the old universe, while everything from this point forward happens in the new one. No need to erase the past, but no obligation to account for it either. It's the same strategy DC used in the transition from Crisis on Infinite Earths and later in Flashpoint. Reorder without destroying. This type of transition also aligns perfectly with Gunn's philosophy. Respect what works, reimagine what doesn't. That's why some actors return, while others don't. That's why continuity seems unstable, but never collapses. And that's why Peacemaker, a show that started as a smaller project, has unexpectedly become the cornerstone of the DCU's narrative reconstruction. And there's another piece that reinforces this theory. It appears in the climax of the episode, the arrival of Captain Triumph, Peacemaker's brother, flying in his suit and taking down a helicopter like a superhuman. That isn't just an action scene, it's a declaration. This universe already has powered figures, active government structures, and a symbolic system strong enough to support entire franchises. It's ready. If this is confirmed, then Peacemaker isn't living a temporary adventure. He's taking part, unknowingly, in the foundation of the next DCU. An Earth where Superman already exists, where Lex Luthor may be pulling strings from the shadows, and where staying behind could be the ultimate price of redemption. Because sometimes the real reboot isn't announced. It seeps in quietly, from the edges of a story that looked like a comedy, and ends up becoming the origin of a new era. Now that we know this alternate universe has structure, heroes, villains, and even its own lingering trauma, one last question remains. Is it strong enough to hold Superman? Not as a symbol, but as an active character. Because if this truly is the new foundation of the DCU, as all signs suggest, subtle references won't be enough. At some point, this world will have to face the full scale of what Kal-El represents, and that's when we'll find out whether it can sustain him or collapse under its own narrative weight. The internal logic of this Earth is consistent. It has an Argus that studies meta-human phenomena, a society that has already normalized the existence of dimensional portals, and a symbolic ecosystem where icons can rise from fallen figures, like Peacemaker himself. But it also carries a shadow: deception. Because everything we're seeing rests on an imposture, and that fragility may be exactly what prevents this world from fully embracing the Man of Steel. In the comics, whenever DC has faced similar scenarios, Infinite Crisis or Convergence, Superman has been the stabilizing element, the anchor that allows the multiverse to hold together. But here, he hasn't appeared yet. His arrival will need to be more than a cameo. It will have to serve as a stress test. If this universe can bear him, then yes, this could be the definitive DCU. If not, everything being built here could crumble into another crisis. And maybe that's part of the plan. Perhaps Gunn is setting up a soft transition into a reboot within the reboot, where this universe acts as a testing ground, a place where characters cross over, duplicate, and clash, until one of them, likely Superman himself, resets the central line. And only then will we know which Earth remains. For now, the only certainty is that Peacemaker is no longer just an irreverent series. It's a roadmap. Each episode is another piece of a puzzle being assembled with surgical precision. The alternate dimension, Rick Flag, the hints at Luthor, Argus monitoring from the shadows, and that unsettling phrase that sums it all up, best dimension ever. But the question remains, best for whom?